Hi guys, it's Sophie. So I did a poll on my Instagram recently asking whether you guys wanted a self-care tips video or a crisis survival tips video. Now people like the idea of both and I may maybe do a series. Let me know in the comments down below if you'd like more mental health videos and if so, on what. And the reason I think people recommended this is because I made a mindfulness box video a little while ago and quite a few people have found that helpful. Now the crisis survival guide is the one that came out on top and that's what we have here today. Before I say anything at all, let me say that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not trained in mental health, I'm just someone who has lived the symptoms myself, so please don't take what I'm saying as like medical guidance, but I can give you some tips and hopefully some practical tips that might help you if you're in a crisis scenario. So it's important at this stage to say that if you think you are in danger of taking your own life, severely harming yourself or hurting anyone else, then you need to stop watching this and you need to either go and present yourself to a GP or your standard medical doctor, or if you can't get to there, if they're closed, then go to an accident and emergency room. They will be able to provide you with help there and then. And these things might help you if you're in that similar headspace, but if you feel that you're really not safe, then you must absolutely go and see someone now. Now with that said, I'm just going to chat a little bit about what I mean by crisis. So crisis does mean lots of different things for lots of different people, but the way I'm going to define it is when mental health symptoms get to a stage that feels near unmanageable for the person and they're having quite an acute response to something. You might feel overwhelmed or like you just don't know what to do, and I've found a lot of these practical tips really helpful when I'm in that headspace to try and bring myself back down. Often people learn really helpful ways of thinking their way out of problems, so kind of like cognitive skills like doing pros and cons, or like sitting down and doing some mindfulness and breathing exercises, and those things are great but they don't always work when you're in a really heightened state. So some of these things are going to just help you when you're at that to try and bring it down so that maybe you can use some of those skills at that underlying level that you could do normally. And that is what I use this little guy for, so he's my first little prop. So for most people, a crisis scenario, a really high, really intense like set of emotions doesn't last for longer than 20 minutes. You normally get some relief from 20 minutes. So when I feel like I just can't anymore, I will just turn this little guy, it's just a little cooking timer, to 20 minutes. And hopefully you can hear that. When you're in that headspace, it can help just to get the sense that time is passing, that this will pass, that this is a temporary state, you aren't trapped here, you aren't going mad, it's okay. I will just wind him back. And at the end of those 20 minutes, you should hopefully be starting to feel a little bit more yourself. I find the timing really helpful as well because I actually take medication that takes 15 to 20 minutes to have an effect, and if it doesn't then I have other things on my care plan that happen next. So timers that make noise that you can hear as they're going can be really helpful to mark that time and not feel like it's all just spinning out of control in a way that like a watch that doesn't tick maybe doesn't have that same effect. So that's probably one of my first tips. The next one is another really like practical little one, and that is that it's super hard for your brain to concentrate on stuff that's really stressful mentally, see, when you're trying to do something that's quite difficult physically. So I'm not a very physically adept person. I have one of these, a fidget spinner, and I throw it from hand to hand if I can manage it, as in I'm trying to catch it in the centre. Some people might be good at that, cool, learn some flippy tricks and stuff, and that's what I use that for. Similar, people find that a tennis ball can be quite helpful. I used to, when I was on the ward, bounce it a lot, so kind of bounce it, catch it in the other hand, and if you find you get used to it, again you can do more with it. You can like bounce it, chuck it in the air, clap your hands, catch it. But doing those physical things that aren't stressful, nothing goes wrong if you drop it, can help you to just turn your mind off of that ruminating that can be quite damaging if you get stuck in it and you start feeling like you can't get out. So just little toys, like these things aren't expensive things, but they can be really helpful, and it gives you something to do and play with rather than doing something to yourself, you have something physically, you can just be sitting here doing this for 20 minutes if you want to, that just takes that little bit of pressure off your mind. The other thing that I find if I'm in a really heavily emotional state is that sometimes I feel like I have to break something or damage something, and often that thing naturally would be myself, and it's about trying to turn that inward facing anger away, but in a safe way. And there's loads of different things you can get for this as well. Something I have is this little guy who is like a stretchy pulley thing, like almost like a stress ball, but like it stretches and warps and kind of changes shape, and I find that really helpful sometimes because it's kind of like a little person and you can kind of pretend the little person's you if you're in a bad headspace, but it's okay, it doesn't actually hurt anyone. And again, you're doing this in that 20 minutes and trying to bring yourself down. Another thing that I do that might not be for everyone but is stellar for me is if I'm in a really bad space, I have a selection of very cheap mugs and plates that I will break and I will throw outside in a safe place, but I will throw and step back or use goggles, prepare yourself, but to break something that doesn't matter, to break something that is okay and isn't you, can be really helpful and really therapeutic. And I think I like the fact I have something I'm allowed to break, and when you're in that headspace it can be quite hard not to direct it inwards if that's what you tend to do, and knowing there's a safe way to get that out can be really good. Other people might like kind of hitting pillows or scribbling on paper can be quite good as well, but trying to move a little bit of that emotion out rather than inwards. And then the last proper practical tip that I'm going to share is one that is really useful and is just amazing, and I was taught this as part of my DBT, but I think it's something that lots more people should know how to do, and it's part of a trio, but I'm only going to really talk about the first one. The trio is called TIP, so if you want to learn a little bit more about what the other options are, to see if they suit you, then do, but TIP, which stands for temperature, is what I'm going to talk about. So when people are in a really agitated, highly emotional, really crisis scenario, it can be near impossible to like start to bring that down. And one of the ways that you can do that is by tricking your body. And it sounds completely mental, I'm going to tell you, but I promise it works. If you fill a bucket up with water and fill it with as much ice as you have in your house, go and buy now ice cube trays or whatever. Fill it up and it is cold. It's supposed to be cold. And then what you do is you put your face in the bucket and what you're trying to cover is this little area here. So like around your eyes and like over your cheekbones. And if you do this, it stimulates your vagus nerve and it gives you a very brief period, sort of 30 seconds to 2 minutes of very calm, and it can help to bring that high down, but you have a window there, and when you're in a really intense crisis you can use that window to call for help, to call your ambulance, to call someone to come and sit with you. It buys you time you don't have otherwise, and I think that's been so helpful for me in just bringing stuff down. And as I say, sometimes it can actually bring you out of that really intense crisis. Some brief disclaimers on this. This doesn't work for everyone, and also if people have heart conditions, sometimes it's contraindicated. So if you've got something that already is screwing up with your heart, you might just want to check with your doctor or your psychiatrist or your therapist if they're happy for you to do that, because it's not, because it is physically doing something to your body. You just need to be quite careful. I'll run over what the other two are just briefly actually. So I stands for intense exercise, and that is like star jumps till you feel like you're going to fall over. That can really help to bring it down. That's kind of a little bit of a way of releasing it, but has a similar effect on your body. It's a physical change that is then affecting your mental state, which works when nothing else does really. And the last one is paced breathing. Well, what you're trying to do is almost make the distance between your out breath and your in breaths fairly long. So you might want to breathe in for say 3 seconds and breathe out for 8, but it's kind of separating it so you don't end up with a quick, which can be what you tend towards in crisis, and instead it's kind of a, and again that long emptying of the lungs can help to stimulate the vagus nerve and can help to bring down really high emotional states. I think one of the best things you can do, those are kind of my practical tips over and now just a little chat, But I think one of the best things you can do for yourself when you're feeling better is to make yourself a plan for when you're not. And that means sitting down and figuring out, if I'm feeling suicidal, what are the numbers I need to ring? Do I have them somewhere sensible? How do I get hold of people that love me and will take me to hospital if I need to go? And how will that work? Where would I go? Do I know where my A&E is? Do I know all of these things? Because if you're in that headspace, it's so difficult to think. And gathering all these bits and pieces, getting your tennis balls, getting your toys ready before the day when it happens can help you so much. I think if you're trying to deal with a crisis with no preparation, that is when it's really at its least productive. But when you're having a good day, try and start thinking about these kind of things. So who are the people, who are the numbers, where would I go? What works for me? You're already going to have some stuff that works for you, hopefully. Some stuff that starts to bring you down. That might be having your pet with you, or wrapping yourself up in a heavy blanket to ground you, or whatever those things are that help you when you're having a crisis, or like a panic attack, that can apply as well. And make yourself a little cheat sheet. I keep mine on the inside of my mindfulness box, so when anyone else is here and if I'm not well, I can tell them where to go and they can do it for me. But yeah, I think using some of these skills and these really practical tips have helped me manage my crisis points much more effectively than I've ever done before. So hopefully you'll find some of them helpful too. So let me know in the comments down below what your favourite crisis survival tips are, and we can hopefully share some ideas and get a little list going. Maybe I might try and pin one at the top with some ideas. Yeah, hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully you've gathered something from that, and I'll see you guys soon in another video. Bye.